Section 6.4, Rational Exponents, but Part 2. By the end of today's lesson, students are going to be able to simplify, multiply, and divide when given rational exponents. In our first example, all we're asked to do is simplify, and we're given 32 to the negative 3/5 power. Okay, again, we know that we cannot have negative exponents, so we move it to the denominator, and it becomes 1 over 32 to the 3/5 power. Okay, let's rewrite that using our rule. So it's the 5th root of 32 to the 3rd power. And it's still 1 over. Okay, now we just need to pick up our calculator and find out what 32 to the 3rd power is. So 32 to the 3rd power becomes the 5th root of 32,768. Okay, then again we use our calculator to find the 5th root of that. Remember, you're using 5 and then the radical with the x when you're using your calculator. So that simplifies to 1 over 8, and that's your final answer. Example 2, we have 16 to the 3/4 power. This one is easier to an extent because you don't have to move it to the denominator because 3/4 is already positive. So we rewrite it as the 4th root of 16 to the 3rd power. Use your calculator to find out what 16 to the 3rd power is. So that's going to simplify to the 4th root of 4096. And then, again, still using your calculator, using the 4 and the button that has the radical that has the x. And that simplifies to the answer of just 8. Example 3 is 9 to the negative 3.5 power. Okay, so again, always make it positive first. So let's move it to the denominator. So it becomes 1 over 9 to the 3.5 power. Okay, 3.5 is the same thing as 3 and 1/2. So we multiply 3 times 2 and we get 6. And then we add the 1 and we get 7. So it's 9 to the 7/2 power over 1. Okay, rewrite that. So it becomes the square root of 9 to the 7th power all over 1. Again, pick up your calculator. 9 to the 7th power, a very big number, that's okay. So it gives me 1 over the square root of 4782969. And then all we have to do is take the square root of that, and it gives us a final answer of 1 over 2187. Now let's add multiplying and dividing to the picture, but again, we're still simplifying. So if you notice, we have the square root of 3 times the 4th root of 3. Since that's a 4th root and that's a square root, you cannot multiply those two numbers. So let's change it so that they have exponents. The square root of 3 is the same thing as 3 to the 1/2 power because there's an invisible 1 here and an invisible 2 here. Times, let's rewrite the 4th root of 3 again. Now that's 3 to the 1/4 power because remember there's an invisible 1 there. Alright, as long as the bases are the same, which they are, they're both 3's, we can add the exponents. So that's going to be 1/2 plus 1/4. You cannot add fractions unless they have the same denominator. So what does 2 and 4 have in common? They have 4 in common. So that means I need to multiply the 1/2 by 2 over 2 so that it becomes a 4. So 2 times 1 gives me 2. 2 times 2 gives me 4. Add the 1/4 to it. Now we just get to add 2 plus 1 gives me 3 to the 3/4 power. And then since they gave you a radical, I want you to write your answer so that it's a radical. So it would be the 4th root of 3 to the 3rd, and then just find out what that is in your calculator. Okay, so 3 to the 3rd is going to give me 27, and the fourth root of 27 is not a nice number, so that's your final answer. Now we have the square root of x to the third divided by the cube root of x to the second. Again, normally we can make it one big radical, but since that's square roots and that's cube roots, we have to rewrite it. So, the square root of x to the third is going to be x to the 3/2 power. Remember, there's an invisible 2 here, divided by x to the 2/3 power. Now, when you're dividing, that means you get to subtract their exponents. So I take 3/2 and I subtract 2/3. You have to make the denominators the same, so 2 and 3 have 6 in common. So you have to multiply this by 3/3 to get a 6, and you have to multiply this by a 2/2 to get a 6. So that gives me 9/6 minus 4/6. 9 minus 4 is going to give me 5/6. I'm sorry, it's not a 9, it's an x. And then, since I gave you radicals in your problem, I want you to rewrite it as a radical, so it's the 6th root of x to the 5th power. Example 6, we have 8x to the 15th power, and then all of that is being raised to the negative 1/3 power. Okay, I would make it positive first, so move it to the denominator and write 1 over 8x to the 15th, and then to the positive 1/3 power. Okay, we learned, again, a while before using our properties of exponents, when you have that, you have to distribute it to both things. So that means 1 over 8 to the 1/3 power, remember it's an exponent, and then you multiply 15 times 3, we multiply those two together, and that gives me x to the 5th. Okay, last step, keep simplifying. So 8 to the 1/3 is the cube root of 8. The cube root of 8, if you just pick up your calculator, is a nice number of 2, so your final answer is 1 over 2, x to the 5th. Our last example is 4x to the 6th divided by 9y to the 4th, and all of that is being raised to the 1/2 power. So you distribute the 1/2 to the 4, and that gives me 4 to the 1/2 power. You distribute it to the x to the 6th, you multiply 6 times 1/2, and that gives you x to the 3rd. Distribute it to the 9, so that gives you 9 to the 1/2 power. Distribute it to the y to the 4th, 4 times 1/2 is going to give you 2. Last step, keep simplifying. 4 to the 1/2 power is the square root of 4. 9 to the 1/2 power is the square root of 9. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. And that's your final answer.